welcome, welcome, welcome. We are live streaming this on YouTube as well, in case anyone doesn't like Zoom for some reason.
Always fun to sit here and like watch the people slowly stream.
Yeah, right. They just start
look at that
filtering
list and just
No fun hold music.
I have problems today. Like I have misspelled a bunch of stuff. Like I almost wrote life no instead of live now.
Yeah, Kyle, you need to turn on the Zoom chat.
This is gonna be fun.
So open up the chat window and there's the little dots. You can enable everyone.
Yep. Done. Thank you for that education, Kyle. I don't think I've ever had to turn. I've never had to turn that on before. I guess must be a default.
Times on Alex and I's show. I've forgotten it a few times.
Why is no one's talking to us? We'll answer your question.
Hold on, I clicked on Kyle's Zoom on his panelist link, so I'm just going to rename myself.
I was going to say, are there two Kyle C's in here?
Yeah, they are.
Oh shit!
There you go. I've renamed you again.
Oh, thank you. By
the way, Kelvin, we need to figure out our birthday party thing at Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to organize that. Everyone that is in chat right now, you're coming to our birthday party.
Mm-hmm. You gotta be careful. Where is your birthday party going to be this year?
Vegas.
And does that include a free ticket to Ride a Boom?
No.
Sure. If your name's Kyle, maybe.
Yeah, there we go. Now I'm on board.
Yeah.
Now I'm on board. It's sad that KyleCon, we couldn't go to KyleCon last year. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same next year too.
Are they doing it again?
I believe so. I mean, why wouldn't you? We haven't beat the record yet. And we're
all just don't move to Kyle, Texas.
I mean, at that point, Lake Kyle would get a little crowded.
True.
We could merge with KyleCon. There was talks about having a subcon at MSP GeekCon last year called KyleCon before we realized KyleCon was real.
Still have the banner in my cart somewhere.
You still have your bat? Your accountability bat?
This is the real scary part of community when it's moderated.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But today it's a pen test bat.
The pen test. There you go. All right, YouTube looks okay. Everything looks good. So I say we get started. It has been 4 minutes after the hour, half hour, however we want to call that. And it'd be a good time to just kick it off. So thank you everyone for joining me. Those on YouTube and here in Zoom. I am joined by a bunch of lovely people who all either run communities or are part of large communities or all of the above. And we're going to talk about the scary side of managing and engaging in communities today. To my right, left, whatever, this Kyle C is over here, Kyle Christensen. I have Wes directly below me and Kylevan in my corner here. For those who highly doubt they don't know you, will you guys run through and do a quick intro?
You can go first, Kelvin.
Oh, okay. Amazing. Well, if you don't know me, then you're not in the MSP channel. Simple as that. No, I'm kidding. My ego is way too big for this kind of stuff. I'm Kelvin. I manage Cyberdrain, one of the mods on /RMSP, one of the mods in MSPs Are Us, or one of the admins in MSPs Are Us, one of the admins in the Cyberdrain community. So I'm all over the place, really. That's pretty much my introduction.
Sweet. I guess I'll go next since you're being quiet, other Kyle. You got Wes Spencer here. I am mostly active in LinkedIn. I'm one of the co-founders of Empath, and jump into a whole bunch of other communities whenever I get invited in, and love MSPs. Was one of the OGs at Perch, and have batted around a number of other places ever since that whole thing started. So never been an MSP, but I love MSPs and have pretty much the rest of my career I'm going to be working with them because I love them. So that's me.
And my name's Kyle Christensen. I've been in the channel for about 18 years now. One of the real early Lab Tech Geek members, as well as real early into r/MSP. I actually built an entire consulting firm using the power of community in around 2018, Sierra Pacific Group, with just community engagement. And at this point, just like Wes, co-founder of Empath, just looking to figure out how education can play a real vital role into helping community become powerful. And some of the other topics, that we're going to talk about today that can lead into how it cannot be powerful.
Amen to that. My name is also Kyle Spooner. I have also one of the early members of Lab Tech Geek, currently MSP Geek. I'm in charge, kind of, I guess you could say. And that's it. I work at an MSP on my day job. So aside from Kelvin, it's MSP and MSP versus vendor consultant vendor.
The lines are blurred these days, right?
You're so right. You are so right. All right. So let's talk about one of the, I'm going to bring up the first topic. And I think that this is something that we all deal with, being a part of and running and managing communities, toxic behavior. Right. It is something that is sometimes prevalent. Sometimes it can be the culture of your community as well. There's also that aspect. But how do you guys deal with toxic behavior? How do you identify it, first off? I think that's the key.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Wes.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's hard, right? There's a natural element of, we've said this forever, right? Like when you're communicating not over voice, which is the way we've been wired up through evolution, and you're instead talking through this digital means, we know this. Voice inflection's hard to see. Points of view are difficult to get, especially because there's wait time in between you sending something, receiving something. You miss body language. We know all that. It's been talked about forever. But I think one of the big things that I've noticed over the years is a lot of it comes down to me as the creator. I create something I think is going to be helpful and I drop it out. And I'm like, man, I've spent anywhere from 10 minutes to 20, 40 hours producing this thing. And then someone comes back and they say something that I interpret as negative. And I interpret that as either you don't get it, you disagree, whatever. And it takes, it hurts a little bit of your soul a little bit, right? Because it's like my intent was to produce and help. My intent was not to do anything other than that. And then I feel attacked. And so then I feel attacked and I want to jump onto that person and go after him. And I'll tell you, like, I've learned that is really, really hard to deal with. Like my YouTube channel, it's no John Hammond level, right? It's nothing close, right? But I remember as the channel started to grow and you start to get some of those detractors and you start to get some of that hate, there were times I lost sleep over it, right? And so I've gone down this journey personally of learning how to separate what I create and produce and the feedback I receive back from it, right? So maybe I'll just lead off with that, but it is very difficult and I can see where these problems come from.
Well, and since the age of time, since the age of the internet, really, with open forums, ICQ, right? The whole idea of don't feed the trolls became a thing almost instantaneously. And the way I've always perceived it is, right, you're at a bar, you're having a great conversation in real life, and someone walks up and says something completely inappropriate because they think they're being funny and they want to break the cadence of the conversation. But because you're in an environment where I can hear tone and inflection, you can see the sense that, hey, they're not trying to be malicious. They're just trying to get a rise out of us. However, in text format, things like inflection and sarcasm can easily make something come from
Gone.
aggression or humor.
Mhm.
And what happens, and I really want to get this point across real quick. There's two psychological researches actually that play into this behavior. The first is the Solomon Asch conformity study, where when people are seeing other behavior starting to get attention or to get some type of validation, like an upvote or a like, then other people perceive that as okay or the normal. And if that's the normal, that's how we want to act. And what in that research they showed is that the human prerogative is to conform before it is to detract. So it becomes a snowball effect where now toxicity starts to spread just because it looks like it is okay. Now, the other thing, when you combine it with the Stanford prison experiment, where the existence of power can become malicious and become also addictive, you have this very interesting amalgamation of two human intersects going, okay, now it's okay to be mean, but also being mean creates power. So now it's like becomes the acceptable personality. So this toxicity at the same time, it's you see this in so many communities. This isn't just an MSP problem. This is an online community problem. And I don't know if you can identify it. I think I'm not a huge fan of regulation and too much moderation or modding. I don't really know how you
Moderation.
I don't know the
Moderation.
Yeah.
But like it's always been an interesting idea to me, because what does that do to someone that is a newcomer walking in that wants to participate or wants to get something out of the community, which is why you fall in love with it in the first place.
Yeah,
Kelvin?
there's a lot of these. I always categorize, especially when we're talking about trolling, I always categorize people in specific sections. Like someone can just be having a bad day and can come across wrong because he's simply having a bad day. He writes a sentence that when you read it, it just you can read the tone that he's frustrated. These are the kind of sort of I call them semi-trolls. They're not really trolling, but they're just having they're having a moment. And when people have a moment, you should let them have their moment and allow them to be annoyed or a little bit abrasive or all of these things. Because 5 minutes later, they'll notice and they'll be like, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put it that way. It's actually something you see a lot on Reddit. When someone gets called out on their toxic behavior, you actually see a post under it like, okay, maybe I didn't mean it that way, but this was the point I was trying to make. Like you see a lot of responses like that on Reddit outside of /RMSP, just in general. When someone gets called out on it, they often like the confrontation makes them realize. Those aren't really the troll type of people. But then you have the other side where you almost have the professional trolls that don't do anything else. And they're sort of like the damaged parts of the community. Somewhere along the way, they might have been the first timer that came and had one of those people react to them that was having a bad day. And they keep reacting with nothing but abrasion, aggression, and all of these other things. So I think it's important to realize that exactly what Carl said about the way that people react to communities, and when they first get introduced to communities, they're trying to get something out of it. They're trying to find either a group that they belong to, or maybe even just trying to find information or want to either help or get help with something they're struggling with. You have to realize that people always start from that point, and not realizing that they start from that point makes it and reacting to someone that is new makes it very unwelcoming when someone gets introduced to a community. I'm guilty of this myself. Let me start with that. In the Cyberdrain Discord, we have a channel called SIP Issues, where people come in and they just ask about specific issues they have with the applications. But sometimes they can come across a little bit like they've been trying to install software for a couple of hours, or they've been trying to do something for a couple of hours. So there's some frustration there, and they come across a bit aggressive. And my first natural response, which I think any human would do, is to give the same in kind. Instead of going, hey, let me try to kill this guy with kindness, you immediately go with, hey, you're being a dick, you're being an asshole. And that doesn't help anyone. But that is,
and it spirals.
then it spirals, because that's not only his first interaction in the community. Imagine that 10 minutes later, someone else joins and reads that interaction. What do you think?
So I'm
their
curious,
response would be?
Kelvin, Ryan Southwell, fantastic human being. As moderators, how do you distinguish or draw a line between unconstructive trolling, rabble rousing versus expressing potentially justified frustration or encouraging others to not remain silent about unsatisfactory experience?
I will happily answer this one.
Please.
So there are, regardless of what you're communicating about, discussing, there are lines you simply just don't cross. And there's also interpreted lines you don't cross. And as long as you don't cross those, it is my opinion that you should be able to share those frustrations as long as it's in a constructive manner. Attacking someone personally, individually, does nothing to solve anything. And it just causes animosity between the individuals. And you don't work towards a resolution at that point in time. You're just you're letting out anger and frustration, and then they're going to let out their anger and frustration, and then nothing is solved, and you both just yelled at each other for 20 minutes. But you can, if the information you contain is expressed in a way that shows you're frustrated, which is easily done, right? But it offers criticisms and explains your frustration, I think that is where you go. But as long as you don't cross any lines that are generally understood, and if you have questions, like if someone happens to delete something or removes you from a section and you're curious, just ask, hey, I didn't feel like I was out of line, can you explain what I did, just so I don't do it again? Open up that dialogue. Now be careful, because not everyone is going to respond to that dialogue as I would, but so that your mileage may vary with that. But I think it's any open discussion should be allowed and participated in, regardless of the tone and the frustration.
Yeah, I want to tag on to that. I think that's solid. And I, from the vendor perspective, for a minute, we've talked about this quite a bit in all the orgs I've been in and out of, like, how do you have to step in the shoes of the person who's frustrated. Like, that's a really important part, to take that empathetic role, right? So like, I understand you get an RMSP, for example, and someone's flaming a vendor, right? Or they're just expressing deep frustration because usually it comes down to no one's paying attention to me. No one's answering a question. I've had something on hold for X amount of time. I don't blame an MSP for jumping in with a lot of frustration, because they feel helpless and they feel like, well, if I express this understandable frustration sort of globally, maybe I can get some traction. And I don't disagree with that at all. Like, I think that's an opportunity for the vendor to come in and say, whoops. I think in my experience, most of the time you come in as a vendor and say, whoops, yeah, we dropped the ball here. Here's why, and here's how we're going to make it right. Usually you can sort of disarm that situation. And I don't care who the vendor is, like, from the best of them to the worst, that happens. I think where we want to be a little bit more careful is understanding when to bring those public things up versus when a one-on-one conversation might be right. But my whole point of view is, like, if we messed up on the vendor side and that person does feel like they've been ignored and they've not gotten the answer, regardless is a workflow issue, a terrible sales rep, whatever it was, we deserve it. So give it to us, and then let us have the opportunity to go and fix it and course correct and learn from it. But I do think it's important to know when to go one-on-one versus bringing something globally as well. I just want to kind of throw that out.
That's fair too. Yeah.
Well, and I think there's a context here, and though it's been going on in my head as you guys have been talking, is there's a dichotomy between, let me think of how I want to phrase this. I like the echo chamber effect or the groupthink effect to someone is posting and they're a vendor, therefore it's a bad post and I want to attack them, when there's nothing involved in the sense of the vendor causing a problem. It's in the sense of, I just don't like them as a vendor. I don't like vendors, period, because that's what
that
the group
person
think, or the echo chamber, or that person. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. It could be an individual. And I think, I remember who posted in chat, I think it was AC, something about the person who feels the need to tell someone not to ask, meaning, right. We all see those posts. Hey, what should I charge per user? Hey, how do I
What
set up a
RMM do
PowerShell
I
script and
use?
automate? Right? Like those ones that are real elementary level questions. But if it's someone that's been in the channel for a day 2 days, a week, a month. There needs to be a level of embrace to, yes, here's how to use a search. I get it. Let me Google that for you. But at the same sense, right, help them understand how to work with the community. Don't just immediately beat them to death, because that's just
Amen.
going to stagnate the
Yeah.
community. No one's going to enter.
If you're going to post something like Don't Ask to Ask, or something similar on those lines, answer the question and then be like, hey, in the future, this has probably been answered a lot. I would recommend you doing a quick search on it. You can do that with Here if you're unsure how to do that. Some people in the community don't necessarily like answering the same questions 1,000 times. So just an FYI. Like,
But
yeah,
that's
boom.
going to be the stage of life, right? How
Yeah.
many people have to be tier 1 at some point in their career to become tier 2, tier 3?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a whole other vendetta to where I think a lot of this is
Yeah.
caused because of our tiered hierarchy. It's created an empowerment where we feel like we're better than thou just because we have more years behind us.
I would love to debate that.
Is
not
it a
today.
debate, though?
Not today. Oh, discuss, whatever. Is anything in between, like if us four got on the thing and had a conversation, I don't think anyone would call it a debate. It'd just be a discussion about it. So discussion.
Exactly.
I'd love to have a discussion about that sometime.
Mm-hmm.
So what we
But-
actually do on /RMSP regarding that is we've recently started saying like, hey, we're regarding this a low effort post where you haven't searched yet. This is how you search. This is like, we're trying to uphold a level of quality on our posts. But instead of just saying that, we post this bunch of resources. Like, for example, the question pops up a lot on /RMSP. Everyone makes jokes about it. Like every day there's one post, which RMM do I use? And we actually now post a response with like, hey, this is our RMM comparison sheet. This sheet has been created by our community. It has all RMMs in it and all functionality of the RMMs in it. You can like compare it. You can say, I only want to compare these two, or I want to compare all of them. You can use that to find what you need. If you have questions about the specific RMM vendors or the teams behind that, we have links to that. Like, check them out here, here, and here. Check out posts by these people. But then at the end, we also say, like, if you have a more crystallized question, when you're starting to understand more of what you're looking for, feel free to repost. We're not just saying, like, here are the resources, but we're also telling them, like, feel free to make another post when you're starting to understand or have a more crystal clear question on what you actually need, because they don't just need to be guided to the results of what they need. They also need to see, what questions do I actually need to ask? They need help in understanding that.
So, Kelvin, I got a question for you.
Are you talking about Jonathan's question in
well,
chat?
We're getting a little bit there, which is, in a community sense, at what point does the toxic genius face accountability? Now, why I ask this is,
I know why.
we've all been at that MSP. We've
Mhm.
all been in that help desk where the smartest guy in the room is also the biggest asshole. And while, yes, they may have a power to the community, they're also now completely going against your values and the traits that you want to bring new members in with. What does accountability look like as a community moderator?
That is actually a really great question. The biggest problem with that is that it's often considered hidden toxicity. Like, someone is already considered a leader inside of a community, and because of that, people are less prone to go against what they say, even when it is toxic behavior. They're less prone either because they're scared, because they don't want to get the ire of the person after them, or they just don't want to in general, because they look up to this guy and have observed it. I'm gonna bring this back to myself, because I have this channel inside of the Cyberbrain community, which is called SIP Calvinisms, because sometimes I am an asshole, and I love being confronted by when I'm an asshole, because the only way I can learn is by seeing that. And what my community has actually started doing is they start taking screenshots when I do act a little bit like that toxic genius, like that guy that is above everyone and sort of portraying that he is. And then once in a while I click on that channel and I'm like, holy shit. And it brings you back down to earth when you get confronted with it. So the only way to cure that in any community is by confronting people with them being an asshole, no matter how scary it is, no matter how much you look up to them, and no matter how much you don't want their ire, because they can only evolve and learn if they know what they're doing, because in a lot of
Accountability.
cases, these exactly, it's accountability. It's accountability. In a lot of cases, they just don't realize.
100%. It is so common where you just look. There's been I've had to learn. I've had to evolve in my communication aspects and my attitude on things. I had to mature. I was very young in terms of a lot of things, including age. When I was involved in Lab Tech Geek, when we were sitting at 2,000 members, I was 26, 25, somewhere in there. And from a maturity standpoint, very new to the business world and new to running a community of that magnitude. And I did and said things that I look back and go, just because I wasn't aware. And I had people point it out to me that said, hey, you kind of have this kind of reputation. And I was like, no way. I don't believe you. I believe them because I were a friend, but like, I can't believe that I have gotten myself into this situation. And at that point, I realized that what I was doing. I had a conversation about how to make it better. And I believe I've fixed that. It's been several years since then, but that is, it's absolutely, you have to talk to people. You have to, if they're a friend or they're a leader, you have to go up to them and say, hey, FYI, I don't know if you realize this, but you're kind of an asshole.
Yes. Like,
And I would love to know from people in chat though, when you see expectations being upheld, does that empower you to contribute to the community, or does it make you feel over moderated? And the reason I ask this is when I ran my MSP, one of the biggest things I learned was I did have a toxic tier 3 guy that was driving tier 1s and tier 2s away from our MSP. Like, he was literally getting people to want to quit because he was belittling them so bad. And the best thing I ever did was hold him accountable, which means I had to fire his ass, which actually instantly elevated their perception of me as a leader.
Yeah.
So there is a level though where I think some people do need that extreme length of accountability.
Yeah.
I've had the exact same experience. It's mind blowing how you're saying this, because at my MSP, same problem. There was one very intelligent but super toxic guy. He was ruining culture, and the moment that he quit, it's not like, or the moment that he got fired, it was actually not like the next day everything was better, but you could suddenly see a gradual scope of everyone, just a slope of everyone starting to feel more comfortable and participating more, because their participation was being suppressed by his voice. It wasn't just that he was too loud and no one else could hear. He was just suppressing everyone else's opinion, which is a shame. Sorry, Wes, you wanted to say something.
No, it's I was just going to say, so this is a great conversation. I remember watching a video by Simon Sinek a while back, and he was talking about there's this graph between like trust and performance. And, the normal sort of view is like, what I want is high trust, high performance, but those are rare people. And one of the reasons it's rare is because high performance usually comes with some arrogance that comes with it, right? And so a lot of times, actually, the best folks are the folks that are like lower performance, high trust. In other words, switch that into like servant leadership mentality, can-do mentality, because we can coach into like better performance, right? And hopefully you can keep those intangibilities of just that perspective in place. And so my point is, I think it's predicated on the leaders of whatever that community is to lead the way, to show the way in sort of like, I am open to you giving me feedback and telling me I suck. I am open to you jumping in and saying, you really messed up here. Like the way you spoke that, the way you said that, the way you discouraged someone, even if it was unintentional. And then I think the leaders of those communities should be the first ones to stand up and say, guilty. I'm going to fix that on my own. I'm sorry. I think when you start that way and you lead that way from the leaders of the community and you celebrate that first, I mean, because Kyle, you're right. I think at some point it gets to be so bad that you do have to take action on someone, right? But if we can set it with us being leaders first by saying, we'll take the brunt of that and we'll be the ones willing to be the first to stand up and say, whoops, then I think that makes it easier for other people to follow in line with that. And I actually saw that happen recently. I won't say which, but I was on a vendor advisory call, and there was a particular MSP person who I love, and they were just dominating the conversation, just domineering. And someone actually had the fortitude to jump in and say, hey man, you just mind to pause the rest of the meeting? Just DM'd him. You're talking way too much and you're overbearing to everyone else. And he's like, whoops, sorry. And he did. And it turned into a much better cadence of the call. I actually wrote back in later and said, I'm really sorry about that. I have that tendency. I was passionate. So, I think that's what
I do the same thing. And I'm surprised no one's yelled at me because I like to have discussions. And when I'm in a call or in a group, I dead air upsets me. And I'm afraid, because I've been in a situation where people are not confident enough to speak and share their opinions. So I'm of the push that we should, someone speaks first. It makes it easier for everyone else to speak first. So I want to talk about Jonathan's question because it's a good question. And this actually pushes a lot of different areas, not just discouraging others. Let's say you have some extremely smart folks in the community who are terrific at answering questions, solving problems, what have you. Maybe one of them looks like a Lyme or something. Have any of you found ways of encouraging that while at the same time avoiding the same people dominating conversations and possibly discouraging others? And with my experience, sometimes they just have the answers, and it's hard to give others a chance because they're there, they're available, they're willing to answer the questions. As long as they're doing it in a professional manner and following the rules, you'll get others who feel confident enough to share their opinions on the subject, and then it becomes a discussion. It's hard to discourage, even from a leader standpoint. I don't want to discourage someone who's answering questions and being helpful unless they're breaking rules or causing their phrasing may be incorrect and upsetting new members or whatever, right? It's a very fine line, and I think it's an individual. You have to work with the individual to see if it's an actual issue. But based on my experience, people will join in the conversation once they feel comfortable, either in the subject or in the community in general.
So I got a question though, Spooner, because I think MSP Geek probably is it's one of the 1% examples right now that we have, which is you guys created massive scale. Like, you scaled beyond what a normal community looks like on the internet with how many members that are in there. And I know with any problem at scale, you have to change your approach to moderation and leadership because there's just simply too much conversation going on for one person to handle or one person to ingest. So there could be cyberbullying going on in the most negative context, and it goes unseen. How have you guys had to evolve your ability to moderate some of this?
I consider myself extremely lucky. MSP Geek as a whole, and it goes back to Wes's leadership. The leadership leading the community has an effect. And early on, we had issues, but overall, it has been an absolute blessing with the amount of what we've had to deal with. We're very open and upfront about what types of conversations we're okay with, what's not, where things go. And we've had to evolve some of that based on feedback we've gotten. Like, we used to have a random channel that, just whatever you wanted to talk about, we didn't care. And that not quickly, over the few years changed to safe for work only. Just because of the amount of stuff that was getting posted, and people left because we were removing stuff which we were asked to remove because it was gross or something just didn't like it, even though it was technically allowed, right? And it's sad, but that's we have 10,000 members. We can't, if you're upset about this specific thing because you wanted to share it, I'm sorry. We have to. It's just, we want to make sure it's a safe and welcoming space for everybody. And sometimes the discussion just doesn't lead to that. So, but we rely a lot on the community going, hey, stop being stupid. Or they'll tag us and being like, hey, they're kind of being, or PDM us and be like, hey, will you talk to this person and just let them know what's going on? We've only actually permanently removed one member from the community. And that's after years of us trying to work with that individual. and have discussions and work with them. And there was improvement when we had discussions and showed them what we were what the issues they were causing were. But at the end of it, we've only ever removed that individual. And I consider that probably the 1% of the 1% as far as moderation goes. But we've deleted stuff. We've had conversations with people, and generally people understand we're a professional community. I think one of the most funniest things I've read was someone on, I think it was MSPs R Us, the Discord group, was like, you should go to ask this question in MSP Geek, and they were like, no, I can't go over there. It's too professional. I'll get banned. And I was just like, because I don't consider us that professional of a group. I mean, we chit chat, we have conversations, we have different professional acting maybe, but even then, it's like an asterisk of joining the community. Like, you kind of have to be professional. You kind of have to be understanding of others. But I guess it was just an interesting thing I've seen.
No, and I didn't mean to put you in a hot seat, or I wasn't
No.
being accusational on if that stuff's happening, but it's just when there's so many, someone said micro communities in the chat, right? There's so many micro communities within the community. It's easy things just to get lost in the stream of consciousness, especially in like a Slack or Discord, where it's going to disappear forever within minutes. And that brought up an interesting question that someone asked in the Q&A, and unfortunately it's anonymous, so I can't give them kudos. But can we address the ease of which we are using foul language in the community? I know we're all guys, but do you feel that discourages certain people out of IT and the community? Should leaders be setting a good example morally? As a pastor, I can't even wear some of the t-shirts, like, and I'm going to call it out, they didn't, the Huntress F around and find out shirt.
Actually, a really good question in general, because it goes back a little bit to we're a part of the problem. As admins and mods, we are in our ivory tower, and we're judging people while we're not really being accountable to our own rules sometimes. Like I know, for example, I am the type of guy that will slip in a curse word or two while I'm chatting to someone, like when I'm frustrated, annoyed.
Done it here.
Like that. So yeah, it's I think that question is actually really good. We should be setting a better example as moderators and admins and that kind of stuff. And we should get out of our ivory tower sometimes and be confronted and be accountable for what we say. Because, I mean, we are a huge part of the problem in our own communities too. The way that a admin or a mod manages the community sets the tone for everyone else. So, yeah.
I'm going to kind of slightly disagree with you, Kelvin. And it goes back to, we should be cognizant of others and how we act and work, but we can't force everyone to do everything exactly like we do, right? You should be respectful, but it's a difficult balance between following what I consider valuable while respecting your values and trying not to step on them, right? I'm not a person who uses a lot of foul language, but I will. And depending on how I feel, it's hard to balance that. And I generally go with, if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. As an individual, not as a group. Because the group okay with that that delves into a lot of problems. But as an individual, you like to curse. That's Kelvin. And that's fine. I won't partake in a lot of it, but I'm not going to push you away unless you start stepping on my individual values. And you may have not cursing as an individual value. And I would understand if someone decided not to interact with you as much because of that situation. But it's definitely a difficult aspect to balance between my values and your values, because again, I don't want to step on yours, but I also don't want to push away mine because they're mine, right?
Well, yeah. Sorry, Wes.
Just going to quickly say, I think that's probably right. I think that like people that know me know I pretty much never swear. I try not to. It's just not my style. It's not kind of who I am. I don't care if you like people that know that. And sometimes they go, they're just going off in the book, man, sorry. I'm like, dude, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I've been around it all my life. Like it's okay. I don't want people to go and stop being who they are. Because that like, I just need to let them know it doesn't make me feel uncomfortable. I will say, some of it is typically just our world. Like I came out of banking and like banking, everyone's stuffy and shirts and ties. And you just don't see a lot of foul language but you see a lot of arrogance, right? Mm-hmm. So like we all have our vices and faults is probably the better way to say it. Well, I think just us being IT people, us coming out of smaller businesses, us coming out of just like the foul language is part of it, right? So my view is like I don't do it. I don't partake in it. I'm like I wear literally every other Huntress shirt on earth. It's probably the one I won't wear, not because I don't like Huntress. It's just not my style of a shirt, right? That's okay. Like nothing wrong with that. So that's what I wanted to kind of say. I'm kind of with where you're at on that, Kyle.
Real quick, I don't want to interrupt your full thought, but you're not the only one who has that opinion about the shirt. I'd wear it. I like it. I think it's great. I think it's funny. But there are like really close friends of mine who also are like deeply involved in Huntress and love Huntress in every aspect of Huntress, but they won't wear the shirt either. They think it's tacky or they understand the message. They agree with the message. They just wouldn't wear it on a shirt. Yeah. So go ahead, Cal.
So, and Kelvin and I being the foul-mouthed two in the group, I grew up in a very blue-collar environment where both my mom and dad swear a lot. It was just accepted language more as an adjective. It was never a rudeness. It was never a projection of anger or negative emotions. It was just an adjective. It was a descriptor. And one of the things that I've noticed in my entire career, especially when I did public speaking courses and I had people trying to tell me how to have better stage presence, they all told me, right, Kyle, stop cussing on stage. They were projecting their values onto me because they wanted me to communicate with the audience and what they thought their community or what the audience would perceive as better language or better communication tactics. And what I found out was that when I tried to be so conscious of removing that language from my own vocabulary, it actually stunted my ability to communicate with the audience.
It's no longer
because I was thinking, don't say fuck, don't say fuck, don't say fuck, don't say fuck. Like literally that was what was rolling through my head. Now, what I've learned from that exercise is that sometimes when you try to project or you try to steer a community to match your own values, and if the community or the audience wasn't those values to begin with, you're always going to have some type of friction between you and that audience. And I think there's also, while it's not a fun thing to say, some communities just won't be for you if you don't like their way of communicating. Trying to change the zeitgeist is next to impossible.
I'd also like to point out that your individual businesses are also communities. So all of this, what we're talking about, tech still applies to your businesses and other parts that even your family is a community, right? So keep that in mind. But that's a great question, and the chat itself was having a conversation about this, and you can be mean and vicious without using foul language, right?
Yes.
And I've seen it, and there's been there's some good times too. Like when that happens, I know some individuals who are really good at that, and it's just like I wish I had your wordplay skills, because that was top notch. Like when it needed to be. Like you don't want to insult someone specifically, right? That's horrible. But it was pretty interesting to watch that dynamic as well happen. There's another question we have. User communities and crowdsourced projects both stand to be greatly empowered by vendor sponsorships. For anyone creating a niche community off the ideas in this webinar or others, how do you strike a balance between giving appropriate priority to the need of your users while not alienating potential sponsors or contributors? I find this one really easy to answer. What's your community's values? Do you value your user base? Do you value sharing knowledge, or do you value money coming in? If it's one or the other, that's what you prioritize. And you can look at MSP Geek as that example. Our priority is people sharing ideas and information. Money, the conference is technically separate from the community itself. we don't have an income stream for the community as a whole. The only money we've made is from the conference. And that money goes back into the conference. And when we pitched the conference to our sponsors and contributors, we told them exactly what we were going to do. We set their expectations. We told them 100% of everything they asked. We gave every answer we absolutely could. We said, our business owners aren't going to be here for MSP. By the way, MSP GeekCon 24 is happening. The business owners won't be there. That is not our target market. So if you're expecting them to be there, the decision making, the people who write the checks aren't going to be there. So keep that in mind if you'd like to sponsor. Our education is we don't sell speaker spots. If you want to speak, you have to have something to talk about. But we want you to submit sessions to talk about. We don't care if you're a vendor. We don't care if you're a consultant. It goes back to our core value of sharing information and ideas and helping each other help each other. We want you to partake in the conference. We want you to go to the sessions. We want you to hang out and network. We want you to take part in the events and parties or whatever that may be happening. We don't want to, you're not a secondhand citizen. You are a part of the community just as much as an MSP is or a consultant is. That's it. We set expectations and we prioritize our user base because that's what our priority is, people helping people.
So I want to follow on to that last sentence you just said, people helping people. That's the key right there. If you're a vendor, let me give you some secret sauce on this, because again, I'm speaking from the vendor side primarily. If you really want to get involved in a community and you want people to put eyes on you and you want to turn it into sales revenue, go do one thing, go help the community, right? So we keep mentioning Huntress. Let's just follow this train. Why is it, I'm just going to say it, why is it that Blackpoint has a threat research group now? Why is it that ConnectWise has a threat research group now? Why is it that I'm sure there are others that have done the same thing? Because let's just call a spade a spade. One of the things that Huntress has done well over the years is the second an incident hits, they're on it. And they're on Reddit and they're on LinkedIn and they're all over the place talking about what they know, what they're seeing, what's going on. They're literally calling MSPs up to help them. Do they know at the end of the day that's going to turn into revenue for them? Of course they do. It's going to turn into awesome revenue, and it has. But let's not also make the mistake that they're ambulance chasing. They're actually helping. They're actually doing good. They're actually making the world a better place. And so what does that do? That causes other vendors to say, well, I want to do the same thing, right? There can be an altruism plus a self-serving mentality to you as a vendor jumping in and helping. But the key is you've got to genuinely be helping your community as you're doing what you're doing. That has to be the forefront. That has to be mission number one. And when you do that, I think you'll see that the community responds back to that and says, thank you, that was genuinely helpful. And other things that are good karma is going to come out of that, right? So I think that's a big deal that I just want to paint as an example what you just said, Kai.
I've personally benefited, not financially, from MSP Geek. I have met tons of wonderful people like these three here. I've made relationships that I will hold on to dear life forever. I have gotten faster service and when I have had issues. I have benefited greatly from leading MSP Geek and helping out where I can and moderating and doing what I can to push everything forward. I will be the first to admit it. I wouldn't be where I was today if I didn't in the position I'm accidentally found myself in. And it is absolutely tertiary to why I do it. I do it to benefit others. And if I can make connections, like if people have introduced me to other people that they know because they found what I said valuable, and I have connected other people who've had issues that I know someone can resolve it. And the only goal I have is to make everything in the MSP space that much better. And if I can, that's my goal. And if I benefit from that, great. If I don't, I don't. But that is the exact thing that Wes is talking about.
But let's bring this full circle. And I don't mean to use the word but there's a full circle part of this, which is a lot of vendors, and I'm included in this, and Kelvin's included in this, and you're kind of getting there, Spooner, is we started in MSP. We identified a problem that no other vendor was trying to accomplish or trying to fix. And we said, hey, let me take that entrepreneurial spirit and go fix it myself and bring it back to the community. And I think and I don't know, Kelvin, if you agree with this, I feel like sometimes that perspective is lost to where we just think that they're a vendor. Like somehow in the age of time, it goes from now you're a vendor, you're no longer were an MSP, you don't understand my problems.
There's so much animosity between like the MSP spirit and vendors. It's like, especially on /RMSP, that's one of the places where you see it most of all. As soon as a vendor posts something, they're like, this is advertisement, this is that, this is that, this is this. Like immediate aggression, met with immediate aggression instead of like, oh, hey, this is a cool resource they're sharing. This might be useful for me. And if it's not, just leave it alone. Like if an MSP would post the exact same resource one of the vendors would post, they'd be like, oh, thanks for this, or they'd ignore it. One of the two. But instead, when they notice it's a vendor, they immediately go like, hey, this is our community. This is a part of us, not realizing that the vendors are just as much a part of the community as anyone else. I think I'm lucky with SIP and Cyberdrain because I've attached everything to community. It's community-led growth and product-led growth. It's everything is around community, and that's because people are still perceiving me that way. But if I would have approached it in any other way, I would have started this as Cyberdrain, the vendor. People would have reacted in the exact same way, even though I have always said I enjoy my MSP so much more, and I will always be an MSP owner first over anything else.
Oh, I'll be quite transparent here. I don't want to post on our MSP anymore because it's been perceived that I've been a vendor too long. And the second I post, I'm a shill trying to get for money, and I have nothing to sell, right? I've just have a passion for that community. I've posted probably more comments than 3/4 to, of the users in there. And it's at the point where it's like, I'm going to post something. I guarantee you it's just going to get downvoted because Kyle's no longer an MSP.
So that brings up a question, right? I won't say who this person was, but I have a friend, a good friend that posted and literally trying to help post and got eaten alive on our MSP. And I said, yo, like, what were you thinking, dude? Like, it came across exactly what you both just said, Kelvin and Kyle, and he got eaten alive for it. He actually made an interesting comment. He said, I'm okay with that because the silent majority saw the post, saw the flame, and said, that's actually my kind of person, and I want to reach out. I actually got opportunity out of it. So that brings up a question of, do communities in some ways, because of the downvote mechanism, because of the hive mind groupthink mentality, does it encourage and enforce a vocal minority that doesn't represent the masses? And there's actually an underneath majority that sort of feels like they're not welcome to speak. I'm not saying that, I'm asking that. I'm curious from you guys, I'm curious from the community here, the chat. I'm curious if that really, how big of a problem that may be.
I think it's a huge problem.
Sprinkle on the variables of the successful MSPs that have extremely good things to contribute may also now not want to contribute from looking in on the outside.
Yeah, actually, that's such a good point, because there's and you see this in a lot of communities. You see the small MSPs judging the larger MSPs or telling them they're being wrong. Well, these people have been in business so much longer and are doing so much more with their business than that small aspect that they see. And that's a really good point of it too. It's you don't know who's on the other side. It's 100%. It's a human on the other side. And Kyle was saying this, like, you have to remember there's another person that you're reacting to on the keyboard, whether it's Reddit, whether it's MSP Geek or any other place. And I think that we lose track of that a lot. It's always a human that you're replying to, and the entire upvote downvote thing on Reddit, I absolutely hate it. I wish it didn't exist. I wish it was just posts. I wish it was just posts and comments, because
totally.
Everyone shapes their opinion based on the vocal minority. Everyone shapes their opinion based on the people who are very active in upvoting and downvoting things, and because of that, you get this closed-minded echo chamber. And you see that in the MSP community a lot. I'm taking an example of one MSP that said, I'm no longer calling myself an MSP. I'm no longer calling myself an MSP, and I'm doing consulting engagements next to my managed services, next to what are considered managed services. And he's no longer calling himself an MSP because, one, he doesn't identify with the community at all because of either toxic behavior or the way that it's portrayed outwardly. But he also says, like, there's no use for me to call it an MSP because I'm so much further down the line already. I'm doing a lot of other things, and I can't compare myself to that community anymore because I'm doing so many different things now. And that is also a very realistic danger about the entire echo chamber, closed-minded place that you end up in.
Well, and it goes back into the conformity idea, right? The Solomon Asch research of, if I see other people doing it and they're anti-vendor or anti-entrepreneur or business owner, right? Because you even see that sometimes of, like when the owners send posts and say, hey, here's a perspective from me as the owner, as the guy that has to put my own economic well-being on the line, right? That even gets beat up quite a bit because of the vocal minority.
Absolutely.
The vendors are vilified, rightfully so, and I will clarify that, in all aspects that they engage in. And the core reason why I feel they're vilified to the level that they are is because the people who are engaging are people that don't help, that don't want to. Their only goal is to sell. Their only goal is to market. Their only goal is to get a lead. That is their job. That is what they're paid to do. And because that is, I'd probably say 80 to 90% of the engagement from most vendors, then that leads them to building an opinion of all vendors, because most of the vendors do it. You know, I'll get this right 90% of the time, and I'll apologize for the other 10%. But that is the exact reasoning in how we handle vendors in MSP Geek. When you go to a vendor channel in MSP Geek, that is their oasis. They can do whatever they want in there. They can remove you. They can remove your messages. I mean, we do it. Obviously, they don't have the authority, permissions to do it. But we won't. We'll give them advice on what they should do. But if they ultimately want to do something, we will let them do it. They can advertise. They can sell. They can pitch. They can put their webinars in there. It is their channel. They can do with as they wish. Yes, Jonathan, you can ban even employees from your own channel if you want. We generally know who the central authority is. So if someone who may identify or even have an email as a vendor, will reach out to that person to verify everything is good. But that is their place. Now, if they venture outside that place, we have strict instructions. We want you to participate in the community. We want to encourage you to participate. We want you to identify you're a vendor, just so that if someone, if you're giving advice to someone, they have a better understanding of where you're coming from, because sometimes context you provide isn't like you're missing context in the answer you provide. And it is sometimes people break that. I've seen people come in and post and like immediately ignoring our code of conduct and being like, hey, come join my webinar or sign up for this great product. And they get immediately tagged and assaulted by the community, because we specifically segment that away, because we want you to help in the knowledge you have, because you have it. You're a vendor. You have detailed information about whatever you're a vendor in, and that is just a smorgasbord of stuff that we could use, and you're not sharing that. And that's what we want you to share. We understand you have a quota. We understand you have metrics to meet. You have KPIs. We understand that. And we give you your space to do that. But when you're in the areas, we want to make sure that we want you to help. We want, because we feel building a relationship with an individual is much more profitable than mass marketing emailing and mass marketing spam and mass marketing stuff like that. If you build a connection with someone in a community, you're going to have someone who validates for you, who pushes your products. Look at Huntress. Huntress is a great example. How many people will say, hey, I'm looking for like an EDR tool or something to help me with, with breaches and stuff. What's the first thing they're going to recommend? Huntress, because they're open, they're honest, they will work with the community. And some people may not like this, but the only vendor I have ever interacted with, ConnectWise, does a call with us, MSP Geek, called the Candid Conversations that I pushed them to do, that they've agreed to, where their leadership team will come on a conversation with anyone inside their channel and have a conversation. Now, the results of that conversation may not be exactly what you want, but they will answer your question. They will have a conversation with you, and it will be, it's not recorded. There's no transcript of it. And they will have a real one-on-one conversation with you and their leadership team. No other vendor does that. I mean, when's the last time you've seen any vendor CEO get on a call with a bunch of rough around the edges technicians and answer hard-hitting questions like, why are you doing this? Right? Like that's unique.
But I think even just to zoom out just a bit, some of these vendors were MSP owners, right? They're trying to leverage community to grow their product that they built for the community and the problem that they saw.
Yeah.
So I think there's a golden rule aspect here of treat them based off their history in the community. Treat them based off of the actions that they put into the community, right? If they're there just trying to sell and they don't ever contribute, then yeah, judge them for that. But if they're putting in all this effort, they're spending their after hours, they're really trying to help out, then right, we need to judge them off that, not just because they are a vendor, right? And I mean, there's examples where I've seen vendors get extremely flamed, and they are the nicest, most kind, humble people that want nothing more than the community to grow.
Yeah, you just said it correctly there, Kyle. I was just super quick, Kelvin, that's where the community has to band together. When a vendor comes out that we don't know who they are and they produce something and it's genuinely helpful and it's something that's not gated, there's no like, I don't care if it comes across as a salesy PDF, but they produce it and just share it and there's no like way that it tracks back to them. We do not need to eat that person alive. Let them have their chance to build their meritocracy.
Yeah, let them show their value.
There's a lot of these vendor sweethearts. Huntress, one of them. Some examples from /RMSP. Everyone loves Roost, and whenever a topic is posted about automation, people reply with, "Hey, have you checked out Roost?" and all of these fantastic things. But they don't really love that vendor. They love the people that are engaging inside of the communities for that vendor. And again, it goes back to that human touch, that human contact. It's people that want to help people. A very good example of that is Ashley Cooper. She made the MSP KB, a resource that we all love. Let me actually put a link in the chat right now, which is an explanation of what an MSP is to both vendors and MSPs themselves. Like, how does an MSP work? How does the help desk look? How does their structure look? How do the people at an MSP work? What responsibilities do they have? And as a vendor, she put out this resource that other vendors can pick up and start understanding the community more. And I think that that's also very important, that instead of vilifying a vendor and being like, oh, you are a terrible, terrible vendor and everything you do is wrong, maybe show them these kind of resources. Show them how we as MSPs enjoy being talked to. Show them how we like you to communicate with us, because it's not just what you're saying, it's the tone of what you're saying. That post that Kyle West was talking about, that friend of his, I've seen that post too. And it would have been an absolute hit on LinkedIn. But the tone was wrong for Reddit. And that's why people started being like, oh, you're advertising. Oh, you're doing this because you're a vendor. Oh, you're trying to get leads. Oh, you're trying to do this. It's 100% the tone that makes the music. You have to make sure that the group you're talking to is receptive to the way that you're trying to tell the story.
And
100%.
I think that's fair, Kelvin. I really do. That's why I typically don't jump too deep into Reddit. I do watch it and I read the posts, but I very rarely comment. But I'm extremely active in LinkedIn, extremely. And that's probably a great point, just because of the audience and the folks that I tend to work with based on my abilities and what I know and don't know. So I think that's fair.
Going back a little bit to the vendor vilification.
Real quick, just as a heads up, we are at
We're at time. I don't know if anyone's got to run.
I do got to run.
I got a few minutes left.
So the last point I'll make is I think that we've established in MSP Geek a safe space for where vendors can communicate publicly. And I think our code of conduct and making sure that, hey, look, we don't allow sales posts here. I think that allows makes vendors feel comfortable when they do engage in other areas of our community, because we have this space that everyone knows without whoever's talking, they're not trying to sell something to me. And I think that's may help for those who need that advice. But as we are out of time, and Kyle's the important, he's got other meetings and stuff that he has to go do. We'll sign off here. It was great talking. I appreciate every single one of you. If anyone has anything going on in the next few weeks, I will be at MSP Geek is having an event at IT Nation. For those who are going to IT Nation, we have a community night. We are partnering with Sierra Pacific Group and the Tech Tribe to bring you fun, awesome times where we're going to do a Nerf war and dueling pianos all at the same time. So you can shoot some competition in the face, and then you can go and listen to pianos attack each other. Alcohol's there too, so you can't beat that, right? Anything else? Anyone else have anything going on?
I just posted Rejection Con in the chat. If you don't know, go check the website out and hear what we're doing. We're trying to do something good for the world.
We're trying to raise money for charity.
Kelvin, what you got going on in the next few weeks?
I'm at IT Nation, so if anyone wants to be called an idiot, you can come up to me and I'll gladly do that.
For free.
For free, actually. It's completely free. I do that out of the kindness of my heart. But I am at IT Nation, so yeah, come talk to me. I'll be sharing out some Cyberdrain t-shirts over there, and I'll see you all in Orlando. Most
Kyle?
of you.
What do you got going on?
IT Nation, Rejection Con. I'll be at GrowCon as well. Just kind of doing my thing.
Interesting. I want to hear about GrowCon later. I saw that and I was like, so we'll talk about that later. Everyone, have a great, wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you guys at IT Nation.
See everyone.